Picture the pitch. Craft something by hand, list it on a Sunday night, and let strangers pay you to keep doing what you already love. In 2025, 8.76 million people actually tried it, and the average one of them cleared $1,131 for the whole year. Not a month, a year. That's the real payout behind turn your hobby into a business, before a single expense gets subtracted. Here is what this actually costs. Technically, opening a shop costs nothing. That's the pitch Etsy leads with. The real spending starts the moment you try to run this like an actual business instead of a weekend project. Forming an LLC or sole proprietorship runs $50 to $500 depending on your state. A resale or seller's permit, needed in most states to legally collect and remit your own sales tax, separate from what Etsy handles automatically at checkout, adds $0 to $100 more. Then comes photography. A light box, a tripod, a phone rig, backdrop paper, $150 to $400 if you shoot it yourself, $500 plus per session if you don't, and you'll be reshooting constantly as your catalog changes. Packaging that survives shipping and looks like a brand instead of a shoebox runs $200 to $600 to stock. A label printer or barcode scanner for shipping efficiency adds another $150 to $250. Bookkeeping software so tax season doesn't wreck you costs $180 to $360 a year. Add Economic Nexus sales tax software, something most new sellers don't even know they need until a state sends a letter, for another $240 to $480 annually. Toss in basic liability insurance, which most people skip until a complaint forces the issue, at $300 to $500 a year. Total it up. Before a single item sells, a seller running this seriously has already spent somewhere between $1,270 and $3,180. Two sellers doing the exact same math can still land at opposite ends of that range purely based on which state they're in and whether they hire out the photography or teach themselves. Geography alone can swing the total by $1,000 before a single product exists. Now the costs that never stop, whether you sell one item a month or 1,000. Etsy charges 20 cents to list an item, renewing automatically every 4 months or instantly whenever it sells. A shop with 150 active listings and 1,000 annual sales pays roughly $300 a year just to stay visible. Every sale carries a 6.5% transaction fee on the full price, shipping included, on $52,000 in yearly sales. That's $3,380 gone before it ever reaches your account. Payment processing through Etsy Payments, mandatory for nearly everyone, runs 3% plus 25 cents per US transaction. Another $1,810 on that same $52,000 across 1,000 orders. Cross $10,000 in trailing sales and offsite ads stop being optional. Etsy can advertise your listings on Google and Facebook and keep 12% of anything it attributes to that click, with no opt-out. On roughly a third of orders for an established shop, that's another $2,080. Most active sellers also fund Etsy's on-site ad auction voluntarily, typically 8% to 12% of revenue chasing search placement. Call it $4,700. Etsy Plus, an optional upgrade, runs $10 a month. Materials, actual cost of goods, typically eat 25% to 35% of retail price for handmade items. At 30% on $52,000, that's $15,600. Packaging and shipping supplies add roughly $1,800 across 1,000 orders. Refund-related losses average about 2% of revenue, $1,040. Bookkeeping and tax software run another $840 combined. For context, Amazon Handmade charges a flat 15% referral fee with no listing fee at all. Etsy's core stack lands close to that same 10% to 11% before ads even enter the picture, which is exactly why the moment ads join the math, Etsy stops looking like the bargain it's marketed as. Total annual operating cost, before the seller pays themselves anything, $31,670. And that number holds whether the shop sells one popular item on repeat or 100 different ones spread thin. So the shop pulls in $52,000 a year. Call it 1,000 orders at a $52 average. Subtract that $31,670 stack, and $20,330 remains. On paper, that's a functioning small business. Most sellers stop the math right there, because it feels like enough. It isn't the full picture. That $20,330 assumes the owner's own time is free. A shop running 1,000 orders, sourcing, making, photographing, listing, packing, answering messages, realistically eats 20 hours a week, 1,040 hours a year. Price that at even $18 an hour, a modest rate for skilled handwork, and labor costs, $18,720. Subtract it from $20,330, and real net profit is $1,610 on $52,000 in total sales. A 3.1% margin, thinner than a grocery store's, and that margin assumes every dollar arrives on schedule. Newer or flagged accounts can also land on a payment reserve, where Etsy holds back a slice of every sale for weeks, turning a thin margin into a cash flow squeeze, even when the underlying math checks out. A seller doing everything right can still spend part of the year waiting on money that's technically already been earned, watching the balance sit just out of reach. Etsy's transaction fee sat at 3.5% from the company's 2005 founding all the way through 2017. Then it climbed twice, to 5% in 2018, then to 6.5% in April 2022. A 30% jump, announced with no seller vote and no negotiation. More than 14,000 sellers put their shops in vacation mode for a week in protest. A petition eventually topped 85,000 signatures. Etsy's own response afterward: less than 1% of sellers actually paused, and churn stayed normal through the quarter. The strike changed nothing. 6.5% stands today, and no comparable protest since has come close to matching its scale. Meanwhile, Etsy's overall take rate, the share of every seller dollar that ends up in Etsy's pocket once ads and processing are folded in, hit 16.84% in 2025, its highest ever, up from 16.05% the year before, without a single new headline fee hike. That's the trap. Sellers don't set the price of doing business here. Etsy does, quietly, through mechanisms most never see coming. And every pricing model built on today's fee stack is one earnings call from being obsolete. A risk no individual seller can hedge against, no matter how carefully they price a single listing. Alicia Schaefer launched 3 Bird Nest in November 2011, selling lace headbands to fund her kids' extracurriculars. By early 2015, it was doing $70,000 to $80,000 a month, and had been profiled by Good Morning America, The New York Times, and Fast Company as one of the platform's best-selling handmade shops. Dubbed at one point simply, Etsy's richest seller. Then came the trigger. Reporters and rival sellers noticed her production leaned on a team, not solely her own hands, clashing with the cottage industry image handmade was supposed to guarantee. A boot cuff nearly identical to hers showed up on Zulily, with no handmade claim attached whatsoever. Craft purists turned on her publicly, on Etsy's own forums and beyond. Sellers who defended her say Etsy's moderators muted them for it. The fallout stretched over a year. Schaefer called it a cruel summer for her relationship with the platform, while she quietly built an independent website she fully controlled. In September 2015, 3 Bird Nest announced it was leaving Etsy for good. Its shop page still reads today, currently not selling on Etsy. This wasn't bad management. By every sales metric, 3 Bird Nest was among the most successful shops the platform ever produced. It collapsed on Etsy specifically because the platform's core promise, small, individual, handmade, can't structurally coexist with a seller successful enough to need a team. Its independent website is still running today, years after the Etsy storefront went dark. The clearest evidence the business itself was never the actual problem. There's a cost that never shows up when you calculate profit per sale, because it isn't tied to any single sale at all. The 12% Offsite Ads clawback, applied after the fact. Take a $35 item costing $12 in materials and $2 in packaging. Core Etsy fees, listing, the 6.5% transaction fee, processing, run about $5.11. Subtract it all, and the order looks like $15.89 in profit. the number most sellers picture the moment a sale lands. Now factor in the maker's actual time. 45 minutes at that same $18 an hour rate is $13.50. Profit drops to $2.39, already thinner than it appeared. If that particular order arrived through an offsite ad, something the seller can't see coming or block in advance, another 12%, $4.20, gets deducted retroactively. The sale that looked like $15.89 in profit closes the books at a $1.81 loss. Nothing about the transaction itself changed, only which invisible fee attached to it after the fact, and the seller has no way to know, at the moment of sale, which of their orders will get hit. Etsy can suspend a shop instantly, without warning, over account verification flags, suspected security issues, or automated policy review. And Etsy's own community forums are full of star sellers with 20,000 plus sales and near-perfect ratings, describing exactly this. During a suspension, the entire catalog vanishes from search. No new orders can arrive, ads stop, and resolution can take anywhere from days to weeks, with little explanation attached. For a shop where the fourth quarter carries roughly a third of annual revenue, typical for handmade and gift categories, a 10-day suspension landing in December doesn't just cost 10 days of sales. It can be the difference between a profitable year and a losing one. This isn't a rare, worst-case scenario. It's a documented, recurring pattern on Etsy's own forums, and it can end a shop's entire year on a single automated flag the seller never gets to appeal beforehand. Sellers who've lived through it describe the same sequence: a support ticket that sits unanswered for days before a first reply, a request for ownership documents already on file, and eventual reinstatement with zero compensation for the sales window lost, regardless of how many clean years the shop had operated before it. Some things genuinely improve with scale. Established shops charge more, and buyers pay it. New sellers price around $66 to $75 on average, while shops 6+ years old average over $120, because accumulated reviews and repeat buyers compound in a seller's favor. But other things get strictly harder. The Offsite Ads fee, optional under $10,000 in trailing sales, becomes permanently mandatory the instant you cross that line. Success itself locks in a cost beginners never touch. Visibility invites copying, exactly as it did to Three Bird Nest. Customer service volume, returns, and platform scrutiny all scale directly with revenue, not gently. Past a certain size, a shop stops being the side project Etsy's tools were built around and becomes a real business straining against a fee structure and brand identity designed for hobbyists, which is precisely why some of this platform's biggest success stories eventually walk away from it entirely, the same way Three Bird Nest did a decade before its independent site became the only place left to buy from it. Roughly 65% of Etsy sellers report earning under $100 a year from their shop, and fewer than half ever cross $5,000 in lifetime revenue on the platform, while average lifetime revenue across all sellers sits above $300,000, a figure almost entirely dragged upward by a small top tier that behaves nothing like the median shop, on a platform that pocketed 16.84 cents of every dollar that moved through it. Etsy isn't a hobby platform that sometimes becomes a business. It's a business wearing a hobby platform's clothes, with a fee stack built to match, and the sellers who make it survive are the ones who stop treating it like a hobby long before the math forced them to, usually years before the crisis point that ends everyone else's shop. If you want the real numbers behind the next platform everyone calls so easy to start, subscribe. That's exactly what this channel breaks down every week.